Matt. How are you?
I'm good, man. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you and I can see you okay. Everything good?
Beautiful. Yeah, all good, man.
What about in the US are you?
I'm in California. I'm halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, about 20-minute drive from the beach, and about 20 minutes from 250 wineries. So it's not the worst place to be.
Close to the beach and close to wineries. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, it's not so bad. It makes it a little easier to take living in the U.S. right now.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but we can leave politics aside at the moment. Portugal is not much better at the moment. We had elections last Sunday. We took a turn for the worse, at least in my opinion. And I don't know. Is there any place on the planet where we can live just, respecting everyone, just live okay without having to worry about anything?
Can we just relax and concentrate on making rock music? That's all I want to do.
And, let's talk about Talent Echoes from Gruesome. It took 7 years from Twisted Prayers for the album to come out. Obviously, there were some circumstances that led to that. Do you think if it didn't take that long and that the album would sound as it sounds now?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's always tough to think about hypotheticals. I guess where I'm at is I'm really happy with the record. And so I guess, that kind of makes everything worth it. I would have much rather not had it take 7 years and not have gone through, the many factors that have delayed this. It's like between the Possessed record that Dan did, and I did a couple of records with Exhumed, and then Gus and I ended up working on this Left to Die live thing. And then there was a pandemic in there. We were going to work with Sean Reiner to produce the record. He passed away. So it's just been, so many different things that have gone into making this album what it is. And at the end of the day, I'm really happy with what it is. So, I can't, I don't want to spend time being like, well, if this or what if this or whatever, because sure, I wouldn't have wanted more than 3 years maximum to go by between albums, but yet here we are. So, hey.
Yeah. And, I was listening to the album, just now, and if I didn't have read what Gruesome is as a band, how you guys started, all the connection to death and everything, I would say it reminds me of, but I wouldn't pinpoint to, because fans tend to get stuck into something and to that box, whatever it is, and they just like to point at it instead of enjoying it. They just point, but it sounds like it is like. And I was listening to it, and open mind, like you should do with music, and I was actually enjoying it so much. It did remind me of. And it brought me back to the days when I started listening to death. And I remember when I listened to Individual Thought Patterns, which was the first record that I heard, really, and then I went back. And it just brought me those memories of, being a bit younger than I am now. And just enjoying it. It was really nice. It's great music. It's obviously awesomely well played, and it sounds fucking good. And that's all you want from music at the end of the day.
I mean, the thing is that, we always intended to be an homage band, to be a tribute band. We always intended to do things that were reminiscent of death. And then we kind of quickly figured out that we would have to zero in on certain albums for each project, because each album that the band did, that Death did, was so original. But at the same time, we also had the realization that, the most important thing is writing stuff that is good and can stand on its own, at least it maybe not, you can't stand on its own in terms of being original or novel, but it can stand on its own in terms of being a good song. And, it wasn't like, hey, people are just going to like it because it's, sounds like something else. It's like, well, no, it has to be good. And I think also the fact that we started out immediately being honest and upfront with people, be like, yo, we're doing this because we're Death fans and this is what we want to do. We just want to make more songs in this vein and we're having a great time doing it. I think it made people, it got that whole thing out of the way. Like, oh, that sounds like this. Well, it's like, yes, that's the idea. But now it's either, do you like it or do you not like it? Which is a more important question because, especially as I get older and older, I find myself less and less interested in newer styles of metal. I'm always finding new things to listen to, in and out of metal. And I love tons of current metal bands, but most of them are playing in the older style. And at the end of the day, if I'm listening to Bewitcher, it's like, well, yeah, some of it reminds me of Venom, some of it reminds me of Tank or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, I love Venom and Tank, so that's great. Like, this is fine with me. I don't have that sense that, oh, the most important thing is originality, and like I said, we try to diffuse all that right out of the gate. It's like, look at the logo, look at the artwork, the fucking layout of the album, the fonts that we use, you know what I mean? Like, we really, I don't know. We try to look at every aspect of everything so that people can just judge it on like, hey, do I like the source material? Do I like this too? And if the answer is yes, then great. Then buy the record, come to the show, let's party. And if not, that's great too.
Yeah, but there is a difference between like a tribute band that just covers said band songs and a band that draws inspiration from a band and plays music in that style. The wheel has been created, there's, unless you go hip hop on the fucking metal record or, death metal, I mean, then you can say like, oh, it's a bit different. But, if the wheel is created, works, don't fuck around with it. Don't try to make it square to see if it works better. No, it's round for a reason. It moves. It works. Don't.
Right. I mean, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm here to just be like, isn't the wheel awesome? I love the wheel.
Yeah.
And, but when we started doing this, we felt like obviously Death to All was already going. Gus had done a couple of tours teching for Sean when Sean was playing drums with DTA. I had done the first tour singing some songs and playing guitar on a couple songs. And we felt like, hey, the later era of this band is being really represented well. And we thought, oh, but nobody's really like giving the same respect to the early material. Yeah. And, but it didn't make sense to just do a cover band on that because there was already the guys that were formerly in Death that were out. And yeah, I mean, I felt like they focused on the later stuff, but they still played, Zombie Ritual and Pull the Plug and a few of these other songs. So, my initial thing was like, well, nobody's paying attention to these first three records, which are kind of my favorite. So we should, if we started playing these songs, we would be seen as stepping on their toes, and that could be disrespectful when we're all just fans. So if we just wrote our own songs, then we're kind of still achieving the same thing as a tribute band, and really, I didn't really think any of it would go particularly far. I thought I first suggested doing it as like a joke. And then when we did the first album, I remember telling my wife, I'm like, this is just it's a goof. Like, nobody's going to take this seriously. Like, we're not going to play live. Like, nothing really will come of this. And I ended up being really fucking wrong because, 10 years later, here we are, writing this really difficult shit and talking about this stuff. So, hey, what do I know?
Yeah, but you were talking about, newer bands and, how you miss kind of that older school kind of music. What do you think is the reason for bands, not being, let's say, not that good anymore.
I mean, well, here's the thing. I think that, you know, rock music in general and metal specifically is a little different than music of the past because it's music that became popular in like the mass media era, right? There was already radio, there was already television. And so because when jazz was getting big in the early 20th century, there was no TV, there was radio, there was even a lot of people didn't have record players, at that time. So rock came of age at the same time that mass media was everywhere. Everybody had a record player, everybody had a radio in their car, everybody had a TV in their home. And so rock is incredibly well preserved, and it's lasted so long because of the media around it and the culture of the media around it, not necessarily because of the quality of it. And when something sticks around for, what Elvis is in the 50s, so it's like 70 years now, right? So when something sticks around for 70 years, eventually the only way to come up with a new take on it is probably to do a new take that sucks because all the good takes have been done, right? Yeah. And so you're basically just taking rock or metal or whatever and then shoving something else into it and being like, look, it's new. I put a folk song in it. I put a trip hop beat in it. I made the drums sound like ambient or whatever, which, I mean, if you like that, and that's great. But I'm just saying, I don't know that it's a real improvement. And I don't know that people would still be tinkering with the formula if this music didn't have such an unnaturally long life. Yeah. So, I think that that's really what it boils down to, is that if you're trying to find an original take on this music, it's survived so long that it's really doubtful you're going to come up with something that A, that is particularly original, or B, that is, any kind of improvement on what's gone before. I mean, it's like, is Nickelback an improvement on Led Zeppelin? Like, fuck no. Sure, they got better technology, they got better, the vocals are all on pitch and the drums are all in time and there's no fucking noise on the album and whatever, but it's not better. Like, and they wouldn't, I would highly doubt that the guys in Nickelback would say that they were an improvement on Led Zeppelin either. Yeah. So really the fact that there even is rock or metal being made in 2025 is kind of a minor miracle in and of itself. So I try not to get too down on things. I'm just like, hey, if people are interested in rock music 70 years later, 70 years after Elvis went on TV, then I think that's pretty fucking cool. It's, and a lot of the newer stuff, it's not for me. I was a teenager I turned 15 in 1990. So I shouldn't be listening to the music that teenagers listen to now. That's fucking weird, My granddad didn't listen to Metallica when I was fucking 13,
Yeah, I was a bit a rebel in the house. My dad still, he had the Beatles, stuff at home, which is not too bad. He had Queen, which I love. But, apart from that, I became the black sheep, I went all hard on music, and my stepmom would use like, oh, why are you listening to this? And I'm like, because I like it. Maybe I just want to rebel, but that rebel in me actually enjoyed that, because sometimes to be different, but it kind of got into me, and I realized I identify a lot with it more than I expected in the beginning. So yeah, it's good. But, one of the things about, newer bands versus like old school bands for me has to do, again, technology, obviously, because people can be at home and record and play easily instead of like back in the day, everybody would get together, jam, learn with each other. And nowadays no one's learning you're learning from YouTube videos, which is not a bad thing, but there is no actually human interaction, so to say. Right. And bouncing ideas and trying to create things together. I'm not saying all bands are like that, but you can see a difference in bands when they can actually play, because if a amp goes out or if something happens, some bands can continue and jam, but most of them now they can't. If something happens, they stop playing, they go back and let's hope it's fixed.
Right. I mean, it's. I think it's great that you mentioned that, and one of the things that was a big difference maker for this album for us was that we, for the first time, because I live in California, everyone else is in Florida, for the first time in our history, we got together and we finished writing in the same room. I think for me, I was a little bit outside of my comfort zone in this sort of more human era type stuff. And so we got together and we spent 4 very long days in Florida, not going to the bar, not hanging out, not picking up chicks or anything, just literally in the jam room, stop, go get something to eat, come back and be in the jam room. And that's where we finished, the majority of the songs. And that's where the instrumental came together. And it was really fucking fun, because it's interesting because a lot of guys my age now play in bands where you don't rehearse, you don't get together until it's time to do a thing. You don't get together 3 times a week. But that's how we all grew up. So we have that background. Whereas now kids never get that background, and on one hand, there's so much information out there, about how to get a good guitar tone, how to play a blast beat, how the business works, how to press your own records, how to book your own tours. There's so much information that is so valuable and empowering, but the lack of connection of just getting in a room with your 3 or 4 friends day after day after day and pounding through the material, you're going to get, there's something that can't be conveyed in pure information. You know what I mean? Like you could play in a jam room forever, like I did when I was a kid, and not know jack shit about how to fix your amp, how the music business works, how to play a blast beat properly. I don't know fuck all about that. Yeah. But I did know that when you're playing with guys in the room, like how to feed off each other and how to like kind of zero in on, our drummer, maybe he's ahead of the beat, but he's always, doing it the same way. So I can adjust to him and we can really lock in a way that you can't do with a metronome, or you can't, you can't do with another drummer. And so those kinds of things get lost. And I think that you do see a lack of kind of chemistry in bands, and a lack of, there's a lack of flexibility that comes from being dependent too much on everything running to a click, and the lights running to a click, and the projector, and then the smoke bombs, and then the this and the that, and we don't have any actual amps on stage. So if the computer crashes, then the whole guitar rig goes out. And it's like, it's great that there's all these tools at your disposal, but you kind of become at the mercy of the tools, and it shifts, a lot of the bands, especially at the festivals in Europe that I see, I'm like, it's a show, and it's a great show with, like I said, explosions and lights and flashes, shit and this and that, but it's not as much of a concert. Yeah. I mean, and it's not that they're not playing, but they're playing to a click, and that everything's synchronized, and it's all sort of being dictated by this master computer thing that they've created that is outside of them. It's not them vibing off each other. Like one of my favorite shows is you watch the US Festival in 83 or whatever, and you watch the Triumph gig. I don't know if you like Triumph. I love Triumph. But it's just 3 dudes, and they all take turns singing, and in many of the songs they just be like, hey, cool, we're just going to extend out for another 4 measures while I just play this guitar. Like, okay, cool. Oh yeah, no, I'm going to switch to keyboard and do this. Yeah. And it's such an organic experience of people playing music. Yeah. And it's not a show. They're playing in the middle of the fucking day. They're just these 3 Canadian dorks. It's not a show at all. It's just them playing music. And I really love it. And so, you know, it's like everything else. You gain something and you lose something, and you know, it's lucky now that we live in a world where you can do all this fancy shit, but you could also, you know, just get on stage and just play. Like, I mean, I've never been in a band that plays to a click track on stage. Like, I just don't want to fucking do it. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned this a lot. I miss the danger
Right.
music, you know, and the danger, and it's not like jumping into someone, it's not attacking, it's the danger of, you know, the energy of something that, you know, something might go fucking wrong at any second. You know, that energy, you know, you mentioned Triumph, I can mention Deep Purple, for instance, or Rainbow. When you watch them play, you know, I mean, Richie Blackmore would go on his solos, and the band was, you know, they're playing and they were looking at each other, you know, I'm going to play a bit more now, you know, going to ascend. And like John Lord was like, okay, let's, and they would just vibe so much, and you can sense the tension, you know, of what's being played. And you've listened to the record, listened to the music, and you know, okay, they are playing a bit, this is not on the original song. So what's going on? And that expectation, it's lost these days. You know, I don't mind bands that playing exactly like the record, but I have the fucking record. If I want to go to a live show, give me something more.
But it's also, you know, you can make even just, you know, you can make playing like the record so safe in that, like I said, you're playing to a click, so that you're playing the songs the exact tempo of the record. You know, another one of my favorite live things is like the Slayer, the first show in Belgium from '85, and they're playing. I mean, Dave Lombardo, I don't know if he was doing amphetamines or what, but I mean, the tempos are ridiculous, and it sounds so crazy, and it's so good, and it's so full of energy. And it's like, sure, you know the songs, you know how Fight Till Death goes or whatever, but you're in that experience with them at that moment, and that's the thing that's happening. And you know, it's tough, you know. And the thing is, as much as I love Rainbow, especially, and Deep Purple, and some of the live stuff is incredible, but then some of it also, I'm just like, kind of like, okay, Richie, like, we got it. We got it like 16 bars ago, man. Like, you know, if I was in the audience at that time, like smoking weed, sure, I'd want to hear you like rub your guitar on the monitor for a whole thing. But like, sometimes it's like, well, this is a bit much.
In Rainbow, in Rainbow, it did go a bit overboard. I mean, those songs that would last like 20 minutes, sometimes they're like, fucking hell, like you could take 5 minutes or 10 minutes off it.
Right, because you're just like, hey, man, I have like 15 of my favorite songs I'd love to hear. They're like, well, you get 7 songs, and one of them is just 20 minutes of stuff. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's a balance, and it's also just about, I don't know, I feel like, you know, as much as Richie Blackmore is famously like a total asshole, and some of his performances are really self-indulgent, he's really one of my favorite guitar players, and he's demanding that the audience comes with him on his trip. Whereas if you're just playing the songs, the most popular songs, and you're playing them exactly like the record, you're meeting the audience on their terms, right? And it's not that one's better than the other, but they're just very different experiences. And, you know, I kind of like the idea that, you know, my favorite band is going to surprise me, and they're going to do something that I maybe will think sucks at first, but then I'll be like, okay, you know, because like when I first heard Human, just perfect example, I was like, I don't know what this is. It's too busy. It's not heavy enough. I don't know what it is. And, you know, because they were ahead of me. They knew better than me, and they knew better than me what their band should sound like. And, you know, I like that. You know, I like Death and Carcass are the first ones that come to mind, where every record is kind of like its own little mini genre. And it's like, that's really ambitious. You're meeting them on their terms when you bought that album and you put it on, you're like, well, we'll see what's going to happen. I don't fucking, like, who knows?
And you know, the one thing about Death, and you mentioned Carcass, is they really didn't give a rat's ass of your opinion. If what you wanted to hear, like, hello, I'm playing what I want to, and the evolution of Death was pretty fucking amazing, and as I said, I got on the Individual Thought Patterns record. I went back and obviously moved forward, and I appreciate now more Leprosy. Than I used back then. No, I listened to Leprosy or Scream Bloody Gore, and I fucking love the record. And I understand now what he was doing, and now the whole evolution of the band, what it was, and it's when the music is good, it's fucking good, and that's it. There's no two ways about it. And for the Silent Echoes record, lyrically, there was a bit of a shift as well, more introspective. How was the approach for the lyrics for these records?
Well, I try to kind of, with each album, I just think, what is it that Chuck's dealing with here, right? Like the first album is, horror movies. That was a no-brainer for me. I was like, okay, got it. The second album is more about real life gore and various things. The third album is kind of more like a dark side of current events. You got a song about like, crack babies and, mass shootings and stuff, which, was all pretty relevant. But by Human, there's a lot more introspective stuff about, Chuck always has these kind of like dual identity themes, whether it's, secret face or forgotten past. And, some of it's about deceiving others. Some of it is about deceiving yourself, and I've thought that was sort of the most interesting hook. And especially in today's climate, because we live in a world like we were talking about, this actually, really ties into what we were talking about earlier. We live in a world where the fake synthetic realm is getting more sophisticated and closer to satisfying all the time. It's like people will just, they're like, well, I don't know. I'm too afraid that if I ask somebody out on a date, they'll turn me down. And now there's so much porn. I can watch exactly the one specific thing that I want to see at any time, even if it's kind of weird or whatever and very specific. I can find it and it's there. Or I can, so fake reality, it's not as fulfilling as real reality, but it's easier to get. You know what I mean? You can get it really easily. And we're creating, fake versions of ourselves, on social media, all these weird selfie angles and all this fucking shit that people are doing. People are they're selling a brand of themselves. And, when you spend so much of your time doing that and also looking at other people doing that, it's really, how do you find authenticity, just on a personal level, when we live in a world where literally there's corporations that are monetizing every aspect of human interaction in the public sphere. Like, if you comment happy birthday to your fucking aunt on Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's getting paid, so it's like we're living in this fake world where everybody and everything is reduced to just being a commodity. And, one of the things that Chuck talked about a lot was just finding a way to be true to yourself. Started with Within the Mind, right? It's like, how do I step back from other people's expectations of me and figure out who I am and what I want? And some of the things that he did in his career, even when they're sort of, eye rolling, or like, you're just like, what, you see him sort of shooting himself in the foot, making these terrible business decisions in his career. But when you frame them as a young man thrust into a situation he's not ready for, trying to claw back some kind of control over his art and his time and his energy, it doesn't mean that he made the right decision, but it means, well, you're like, well, I get why he pulled too far in this other direction and why he did some of this stuff, because he was, when he was making Human, I think it was only like 23, 24, which is amazing. You think how young these guys were and how good they were at playing and what they did. it's pretty wild, you know. So it's like between the lack of maturity and the sort of situations that he found himself in, you can be a lot more sympathetic to him, and you can also see that that's the through line, right? It's like it's about trying to pull away from people and things that are using you, and people are things that are taking you away from being the truest version of yourself. And so that, to me, as soon as I kind of put those pieces together, the lyrics came really easily. And I was like, oh yeah, I could write about this. Oh yeah, I could write about that. Oh yeah, I could write about this. It was just like, okay, done. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this day and age. It's like, what you're talking about, those social media influencers. I fucking hate them. And I hate them, but, you know, they're doing whatever they have to do. But there is no plan B. There is no proper thinking. I don't know. It's so shallow, so fake. You know, I always say I prefer to sleep comfortably with a clear conscience than to, you know, sell out or whatever it means. I have to stay true to myself in order to live, you know, the way I want to live. You know, I don't want to pretend that I'm the best presenter or the best radio host or the best photographer, whatever. You know, I just want to do for what I believe, you know, enjoy what I'm doing. When it becomes a fucking burden and, you know, it's just not for me. You know, I do photography. I've been doing for 25 years. And the day that it becomes a job, stop doing it.
Right.
Because I just want to have fun doing it. I don't, you know, I don't want people to say like, oh, there's a pixel there that it's not. You know, it's fucking details. It's live the moment. That's important. And, you know, just to wrap it up, obviously with an album, people will ask for a tour. Obviously busy with Exhumed as well, as you were talking early. So what are the plans for Gruesome to play live shows? And in this case, for me, Europe, is there any plans? What's the idea?
Well, I don't have anything specific, but I did have a very good meeting with our agent last week. We kind of just set up a sort of master calendar so that, you know, he can figure out when we're actually available, you know, because that's really the challenge. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I've consciously made a decision, you know, not to get too into the nuts and bolts and how the sausage is made, but I've centralized. I was like, okay, well, if Exhumed and Gruesome and Left to Die have the same booking agent, that's going to reduce the possibility for scheduling conflicts. That's going to help, you know, because Gus and I are both in Left to Die and Gruesome, and I'm in all three. And it's like, okay, if you know what one's doing, then that's going to hopefully make it so we're able to work more and to get out and play, you know? So right now we're locking in some stuff for the States. There's absolutely plans on the horizon for Europe. You know, I think at this point we're just really kind of seeing how the album goes and what people's reaction to it is. And so far it seems, you know, fingers crossed, very, very positive. And, you know, hopefully that's going to open some doors for us to do a lot more stuff, because, you know, we want to be busy and we want to be playing, you know, because in my mind, you're kind of not a real band unless you play live, you know, that's part of the whole fucking deal. And, you know, I'm looking forward to playing these songs live. So hopefully I'll have something more concrete to tell you very soon. But yeah, we are 100% going to be supporting this record, and there's going to be stuff being announced in the near future, you know?
Cool. And, you know, for me, in my opinion, with a band and an album, it really comes alive when it's played live.
Right.
That's when, you know, that was the reason why you make music. At the end of the day, it's not just, you know, I mean, yes, it's for your self-enjoyment, but you have to play it live. Rock music, metal music, it's meant to be played live. And I think the albums normally come alive when they are played, you know, in front of a crowd. So, you know, fingers crossed for it to happen. So
100%, man. I mean, it's like the audience is part of it, and the the volume, you know, that's part of it. It's like, even if you have a really good stereo system, it's not the same as being, you know, as being in a room with a bunch of other people that are there for the same reason. And, you know, you feel that the music actually physically move you, you know, that's what you want. And that's, you know, that's what we love doing. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, Matt, thank you very much for your time. All the best for Gruesome. Hopefully, fingers crossed, next year we can see you guys here in Europe. And, you know, Silent Echo is a great record. You know, as I was saying, I was listening to it. I was loving it. Brought me back to those late 80s, early 90s, you know, when, you know, was great music being made. And I got that vibe. It's a great record. It should be played live. And hopefully, you know, that will happen. All right.
All right, man. Cheers. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. And hope to see you soon.
Too,
all right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sounds like a plan.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.